Well, greetings, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. This is Fubara Eneli, your host of Rethinking Freedom. It is September 15th, 2025. Where has the year gone? And we're excited to be with you here this morning. And I'm really excited about the two guests that I have. You've seen them on this show before. You've heard them on the show before if you just listen on the radio station. But for those of you who are on our YouTube channel, thank you for liking, thank you for subscribing, thank you for sharing. We have none other than Dr. Rodney Duckett. Dr. Duckett he's a historian, he is a nurse practitioner, he is a veteran, he runs a mentoring program in our community amongst a host of other things that he does. And if you would check out our description on our YouTube channel, we have a lot more information. I'm keeping the introduction brief, not because he doesn't deserve more of an introduction, because we have a lot to talk about today and we want you to hear from them. We also have with us, and I should also say, Dr. Duckett, you have a radio show that comes on. Tell our audience where they can hear you.
It's every Sunday from 7:30 in the morning to 8:30 in the morning. You can get me right before you get that religious revival going on. So it's on KISS 103 FM. So I'll provide you the link if they want to listen in England. So,
Wonderful. We appreciate that. Yes. And so we also have a guest all the way from the United Kingdom. Yeah. The original, what would you say, mother of the United States of America, right?
Yeah.
You guys birthed this nation, so to speak, pun intended, birth of a nation, for those of you who know what I'm talking about. None other than Adesoji Iginla. Adesoji is an amazing historian and journalist as well. You can check out his YouTube channel, Adesoji Speaks Knowledge. He's also an author of Africa Illuminated on Adesoji Speaks Knowledge every Sunday at noon Eastern. You can join him for a review of African news items. We need to understand how we're connected to the globe. And he and I co-host another show on Wednesday evenings called Women and Resistance. And if you have not checked that out yet, listen, I'm not bragging, you are missing out, because we're covering some women that we should know and don't know, and women whom we think we know, but not nearly as well as we should. So having said that, let us dive right into the topic today. Our topic today is the global arsenal of white supremacy, from colonies to Trump's America. And I've got to tell you a little bit about what prompted this. I don't know if you've seen the movie Sankofa. It came out when I was still in college many decades ago. It's been, over 30 years now that movie came out. Yeah. And there's a part in that movie where an African woman who had been enslaved, who had now subsequently been raped by her white enslaver, had a son who was named Joe. Those of you who are in the Christian faith, you can extrapolate Joe, Joseph, what the significance of it is and all of that. And he was so indoctrinated by his Christian faith that his enslavers and the white priests were giving him, that he longed for his mother to be the Virgin Mary, the white woman with the white Jesus. So much so that when he felt that his mother was a heathen and wasn't following the practices and the will of the white God, he actually killed his mother himself. And I know that's a little bit of a spoiler, but it's a 30-year-old movie. And if you haven't seen it, go see it now, by the great Haile Gerima.
Yes.
And when I heard about, and then you have to have been under a rock to not have heard of the murder of a man called Charlie Kirk. Now, you may not have heard that there were 3 other student who died that same day, 2 killed by a classmate, and then he turned the gun on himself and killed himself not too far away. You may not have heard about those deaths because, not all lives are equal, apparently, right?
Yep.
But certainly what has consumed the airwaves in the United States and beyond is the death of a man named Charlie Kirk. Now, I am not in any way advocating violence against anybody. Although he is a man who advocated violence against me and my type and my kind. But what I started to see was, here we have essentially what we can describe as white on white crime. We had nothing to do with it. When I say we, as Black people, it was all the way in Utah there, but like 2 of us there, right? I am being facetious. And yet, on the internet, the airwaves, and I understand that this stuff is curated for us as well, there were so many Black people who were taking on the cry of a man who, in his own words, repeatedly stated, "You are less than me." In no uncertain terms, you need to go back to before Civil Rights Act, because that was a mistake for the Civil Rights Act to be passed. And as I was thinking about it, I was thinking, what we're really dealing with here is white supremacy. It's not an American invention. It is the global legacy of conquest and colonization. Yeah. But it has a lot of different tools and a lot of different ways that it has permeated, that it is maintained, that it continues to grow. And I wanted us to talk a little bit about that today. Let this be a way that on Rethinking Freedom, we really think about what it means to be free as Black people. And whenever we're free, we bring everybody else along with us. Let's just be clear. Civil rights, and after that, you got women's rights, you got LGBTQI rights, you got rights for people with disabilities, and so on and so forth. Everybody's rights are back. That's just historically what it has been. Yeah. So, what has been your take or your observation on what has been going on and how it ties into this global arsenal of white supremacy? Whoever wants to start first.
I'll yield to the doctor.
Me and you have had multiple in-depth conversations as it relates to this, and I want to start off with saying any murder of anybody, any assassination is horrible. We should have the right to speak freely, and we should have the right to go home to our families. I will respect the wishes of Charlie and give him no empathy or sympathy, is something that he has said numerous times. But I will say that there are children that are involved with this. And that's the one thing that I look at. Children that are involved with this that are probably going to be misled by their father's legacy. And I'm only praying that the right people are able to enter into these children's lives to help them, because they're going to be missing the father. Regardless of how we see the guy, he's still a father, and someone still loved him. I don't have to agree with his rhetoric, which I 100% don't agree with his rhetoric. And I don't believe that people should be choosing sides and saying that he's a great man. He's not necessarily a great man. He's never served the military. He's a college dropout. I'm not saying anything that's inadequate about him or not factual about him, but at the end of the day, his primary job was to be a soldier on the battlefield, and that was to scatter the masses, basically to scatter the masses. So going back to what you're saying, white supremacy, he was a tool that was used in white supremacy, because at any time, anybody could have pulled Charlie to the side, any white guy of influence or any Black guy of influence that's a part of the conservative party, and say, hey, man, like, we've got to figure out a different way to get your message across, great message to a certain degree, but some of that stuff is dividing America. I need for you to be the person that stands in the middle and pull America together. No, what they done was they put fuel on the fire, and they said what you're doing is an outstanding job, and keep feeding the monster. And then the monster got fed until the monster got tired of being fed. So this is where we're at right now, I say, in America. We are literally from 1969 to now, somewhere close to about 55, 56 years from the civil rights movement, you know, and we're still having these internal intrinsic battles. One side refuses to see the other side's part. But these are the same people that make decisions about education. These are the same people that make decisions about healthcare. These are the same people that make decisions about international trades and tariffs. Meanwhile, it really doesn't affect them because they have all the money. So when you have all the money and you can make the decisions to make everybody else's life miserable behind it, I always say you're not truly in a place of education or a place to educate someone because of the empowerment that you have. It is all about survival. And racism is, a lot of times, Dr. Claude Anderson gets this right when he talks about racism. And I'll say this before I yield. Racism has little to do about hating people. Racism is about who is winning the race, who controls the economics and the powers to maldistribute to other people. And this is what racism is. So is Donald Trump a racist? Yes. Is Charlie Kirk a racist? Yeah. Is that a negative word? Am I calling him a bigot? No. I'm just saying who controls and can maldistribute the wealth wherever they need to maldistribute the wealth is what it is. And we have to look at that. And we don't want to see that for what it is. You know, and I know it might piss a lot of people off, and I'm not in the business of making everybody happy. I just say do your fact checking. Do your fact checking. That's the biggest thing. Look at the history of some of the people that are representing our country now, okay? And then have that conversation with me later on.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you on this definition of racist and who is a racist and whether it's a good or bad thing, or it's just a neutral term. Go ahead, Brother Adesoji.
Okay, so when we look at the umbrella called white supremacy, we have to first of all understand something. Something has to drive it. And this is
how would you describe that, even white supremacy, for people who are like, I don't know what that even means?
Okay, so it's basically a system of control. It's one of domination, extraction, and control. So that's the key thing. So extracting what exactly? Resources. It's a question of who controls resources. How do we get to control the resources? In order to get to said resources, if people are in the way, what do? We have to dehumanize that set of people. That's where books like Exterminate the Brute comes into play. You create the idea in the head of your audience that the people that they're looking at are not deserving of where they're at. So in the American space, you look at the Native Americans. The Native Americans bore the brunt of dehumanization. And where are they today? They're non-existent. I mean,
well, there's still few, but largely, definitely genocide.
Yes, but largely gotten rid of. Now, which brings me back to the issue of resources. When Charlie Kirk got assassinated, killed, murdered, call it what you may, the first thing I did was look at, unfortunately, because if you understand the system, how it operates, you look at certain levers. I looked at the stock exchange, the NASDAQ, the Dow Jones, the FX 100, the CAC DAC. They didn't move. In fact, they gained points, which means that is not an issue for business. So who is the issue for? Religion. Now, this is where it gets very touchy, because you can argue with people about facts, about opinions, but when it comes to belief, John Henry Clark would say you could do everything, but you can argue religion with people. So he's been put on a pedestal. The question is, how do we get people rational enough to look at the man for what he is? And how do we know the man for what he is? His words. But unfortunately, I don't know whether it's down to lack of education or the fact that they don't want to yield ground. And when I say they, I mean people that look like you and I don't want to yield ground on the idea of, I might be wrong, which is what white supremacy does. White supremacy never apologizes for anything. And so you see that play out in the people that attach themselves to that system, that they also don't want to apologize for anything. So here we're locked in a conundrum of calling out what is wrong, but at the same time, not moving anywhere. Because if you're having a bad faith argument with someone back and forth, what betterment, what can society gain from it? So I mean, from the outside looking in, you look at the United States, you look at the felon in chief. Oh, you guys call him the president, but we see him for what he is. The felon in chief has decided, you know what, this is my moment to detract from something else. I am going I'm going to fuel this thing as much as possible that keeps you guys focused on this one issue that I could probably just ride into the sunset without anybody looking at my, how can I say it?
The Epstein files?
My transgressions. Yes.
Well, it's interesting that you'd bring that up. You know, I'm not into conspiracies, but a lot of things that we thought were conspiracies later on we find out are fact. You know, we look at COINTELPRO and the Black Power movement, but someone was speculating that you rile people up enough about this, you cause basically a civil war of some sorts, and then you can call martial law and you suspend elections, and we don't have to have midterm elections and so on and so forth. That's not so far-fetched given how America is going right now, because so many things we thought would never happen have happened. But while we're on that point, I did want to say something that just came to mind. You know, I'm here in Texas, and when the young brother was in his house eating his ice cream, minding his own business, and a white female officer claims that she forgot where she lived, and which is just amazing to me, and walked into his place and then took his life.
That's Gene.
Yes, his family, his brother, you know, jumped up and immediately was, we forgive her, and you know, she didn't mean it. All of this, be lenient with her. And even as he was making those comments, her defense was filing an appeal, because even the 10 years that she got for killing him was too much, right?
Yep.
Now take a look at what just recently happened with the widow of Charlie Kirk. I just feel like I need to point this out. When we lose our loved ones, it's always a de-escalation. We're always telling the community, calm down, don't rush to judgment. You know, we're trying to bring people together. Yeah. The comments that she made sounded like, hey, war on. We're going to get the evildoers. Now, I'm not exactly sure who the evildoers are, to the extent that this was, well, like I said, white on white crime in Utah. We had nothing to do with it. Although HBCUs somehow caught some stray bullets this week with death threats to them. And, you know, that caused them to actually even have to, in some cases, shut down momentarily. But having said that, some of the ways, and Dr. Duckett, you started to address this, some of the tools that white supremacy has used that are in this global arsenal of white supremacy. We have the law. We can start with a papal doctrine of discovery. Hey, we came, we discovered it, it's ours, right? I wish I could just go discover somebody's house or bank account and it's mine. Economics, looking at the plantation slavery, looking at even things like the Belgian Congo rubber terror, the Caribbean sugar wealth, we can go on, right? Yep. Looking at religion, missionaries teaching obedience and demonizing African spirituality. Yep. One of the things they would do when they first get into a place is to kill off all the healers, right? Which might explain why they have all of these skulls in European museums. You have education. Thomas Macaulay's Minute on Indian Education. We must create a class of persons in English taste, in opinions, in morals, in intellect. Carter G. Woodson talking about the miseducation of the Negro.
Yeah.
Of course, we can talk about media. At one point, there were human zoos in Europe, dark continent caricatures. Today we have, we had Birth of the Nation in the White House. Today we have all this social media stuff. And then, of course, science, whether it's eugenics or racial hierarchies, that are master's biology. Frantz Fanon once said, colonialism is not satisfied merely with holding a people in its grip. It turns to the past of the oppressed people and distorts, disfigures, and destroys it. What do you see are some of the tools that are being used today in modern times to distort and control us and thereby limit our ability to effectively fight for our liberation?
Yeah, that's a good one, and I got to go to rest in heaven to Dr. Francis Quest Wiseling and Neely Fuller. When you go to that, they were way beyond their time of understanding the chessboard. It is a human game of life called chess. Those 9 or 10 levels of people activity is paramount, and this is what they get us tripped up on every time. Right now, we have that level of activity that they hit us with, which is law. And we're fighting law constantly every time because it's never really evolving. It is trying to revert back to the way they say things were. And you're seeing that pull that comes back. So once you go down that rabbit hole, you miss everything else on the chessboard because there is a media war that is going on right now. And we see that media war being AI. So what does that mean? What does AI mean? And why there's no regulatory value on AI, and why are people having social media AI relationships with computers and things like that? So again, that chessboard is very valuable. So to understand education, economics, labor, law, politics, religion, war, all of those things, it's a chessboard that's being played on. And if you really look at that chessboard, we own and occupy nothing on that chessboard. If you think we own and occupy entertainment, media, because that's what we're so good at. No, there are people over us that control us based off our gifts and talents. So you can see someone as talented as a Whitney Houston dying of an overdose in the bathroom, which is suspicious, So talented voice, talented individual, but she did not control her own talent. And then this is how the tools of white supremacy is. We'll find someone that is an influencer, and we will either get them to sell out their own kind, or we will take their lives from them. You've seen that with Malcolm X and Fred Hampton and Edgar Mevers and anybody that had a voice that could awaken the sleeping giant within and saying, we all got to pull ourselves together and work together as a unit. We don't want that. We want to scatter the masses. As long as the masses are scattered, as long as we don't each different owl of the wing of the bird going this way and that way, we'll never pull ourselves to the middle and say, this is a fight that we're in for our life. There are some people that really honestly believe that slavery's never happened. Some of them are older than me. So they really believe that it's a lot of hyperbole that was made up. And that is a form of white supremacy. That's a form of the education doctrine. Those who control his story will control our story, because education is a noun, a person, place, or thing. But to educate is a verb, okay, and it's an action. So those that educate have that action to educate, meaning our school teachers have that education action. And if that doctrine comes down by law and by politics, this is how you will educate your children. And you will not talk about Dr. King. You will not talk about Fred Hampton. You will not talk about Malcolm X. And we'll find you a safe Black person to talk about. We'll have you talk about Ben Carson all day long. We'll have a safe person for you to educate you on, so that way you can see yourself as a mirror of them, even though they haven't really done anything for us as a race of people. So that is what it is. It bases itself off the root foundations of eugenics. It's something I know you're going to talk about. So those 10 levels of people activity, as long as we're not nowhere in that threshold, we will always be subservient in some type of role, no matter who you are. Even if you're sitting as a supreme justice, you will still be in a subservient role because you have other people that will keep you in balance. So,
Listen, I hope you all are taking notes. I know that I'm going to have to come back and replay this and rewind and pause, and because there's a lot of information that you're giving and a lot of research that we need to do. There are a lot of things that we were not taught in our schools. And by the way, when we talk about education and look at us as a global people, what has really worked for white supremacy is to make sure that they miseducated us wherever we are. So what Black people in Brazil learned about Black people in Africa would not be something that would make them come together with Africans. True. What Africans on the continent learned about Africans in the Caribbean and in the United States is not something that would endear them to each other, and vice versa. And as we're talking about, we may think we even own the area of entertainment. Again, go and research this for those of you who want to educate yourself. There is a very close link between the shareholders of private prisons in the United States and the shareholders of the major music labels in the United States, particularly the ones that play what we would consider more urban music. And basically, they dictate what artists get put on, who makes it big, what's played on the radio stations, what we're bopping to in the clubs. And so those of you know that this is not my area of expertise, but some of you are old enough to remember when rap and hip hop was conscious.
Yes.
When rap and hip hop was about liberation, was about thinking, and you could listen to a rap song and get knowledge about your history. And then somehow it morphed into gangster rap. And then I don't even think we're gangster rap now. We're really just about shoot 'em up, show the drugs, da-da-da, women, this, ho, and that, male and female. And yet there is a connection between those who are pulling the strings and determine who our artists that blow up are, and those who are funding and making money from the prisons where so many of our brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers are incarcerated.
And then I want to say this, and this is something I've been doing here for the last 2 years. I'll have random conversations with people, and we'll get on the Sean Combs scandal. We'll talk about Sean Combs. And then I'll come back to them maybe a few days later, a week later when I see them, and then we'll talk about Hugh Hefner. You know, the difference between the conversations are so vastly different, even though the people done the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, like it's amazing that Hugh Hefner has practiced this deviant behavior for nearly 75 years and
was celebrated.
And celebrated, and the flags were almost half staff for him when he passed. You know, and not taking anything away from the victims of any one of them. Okay, you know what Sean Combs done was horrible, but still, you know, he's more demonized with less amount of time in that atmosphere of doing those deeds that he's done as compared to a Hugh Hefner. You know, literally, like people talked about him for 2 weeks straight. Now, if you look at Hugh Hefner, what was he? I mean, he was a creepy man that walked all day long in pajamas and a robe. Now, let's fast forward to where we are now, and let's show you how entertainment is. This is how entertainment is. Who's the new creepy man that walks around in pajamas and robes that has resurfaced in a new light? And that's Snoop Dogg. You see it right now. He has walked around. Listen, and this is the one thing that I won't take back, and it's no. And I'm coming straight after you, Snoop Dogg. I'm not a rapper or nothing like that. Man, you have victimized our women for way too long. I'm sorry.
And now we're calling him Unc, and he's got all these deals. All of these deals with white America. Yes.
The white supremacy tool at hand. Sometimes they will use our own. It's like the famous Dr. Amos Wilson says, I love this quote. I use it almost every day. anything that you do not control is used as a weapon against you. We don't control Snoop Dogg, so he is a weapon against us. So to listen to him, to watch him on TV, to promote his annex, to share anything, we're just feeding the monster. We're feeding the monster.
Yeah. Go ahead, Adesoji. Yeah.
So we're living in a time now that media is the projection of everything. And I'd like to use this quote from Malcolm X. He said, if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. On the media, he said, the media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. That is power. I say that to say this. You're in the United States. There's an entity based in Florida called the PragerU University. That university, exactly.
Yes.
Because we're talking about education.
I'm not going to encourage people to even go down that rabbit hole.
No, but you need to be aware. You need to be aware that this is the reason for such an entity existing. It's an institution that I can't even call it an institution. It's a vehicle that is used to muddy the water. When the doc said somebody older than him doesn't even know slavery exists, that is the very reason PragerU exists. Because our people don't engage. Libraries are like cemeteries. Instead of being the marketplace of ideas, they're cemeteries. People don't go there. If you want to pass any message across on social media, it either has to be backed by music, some degree of sports, or somebody must be scantily clad, i.e. naked, in order for people to focus. That means we are almost battling against ourselves. That in the event of striving for a strategy to survive, we can't even focus enough to save ourselves. No one is going. There was a movie that came out the other day, Superman. And one great teacher told us that Superman doesn't exist. It's a myth. And it's true. There is no super politician out there that is going to come out and save you. You either have to make those politicians your tools in order to be your guard dog, and I use that frame of reference loosely, to protect you against what is out there, expecting them to just stand up and start doing it without having the idea of what needs to be done to counter what we now know as white supremacy 2.0, because you guys are in the epicenter right now.
I think we passed 2.0. We might be at Jim Crow 3.0, but yes.
and the worst aspect of it is now globalized. Saturday, you had a South African who happens to live in the United States, based out of Texas, video link to a march by the far right in London, telling them they have to either wake up or die, as if they're under an existential threat, which is a fallacy in itself.
And there were 110,000 people who showed up for that march. Can you talk a little bit about that and who the South African turned Texan is who phoned in?
So starting from here out, the 110,000 are basically these people who have this idea that the country is under siege, the United Kingdom is under siege. Here's the problem with that. The United Kingdom used to be known as the British Empire. And its major moniker at that time was the empire on which the sun never sets. Prior to the early 60s, anyone who happened to fall under the yoke of British Empire had access to London. As a result of that, trade, travel, and what have you, people came to London. Some settled, some went back. The settlers increased over time. And from then on, the local population have had their backs up. But fast forward 2025, with the rise of fascism in Europe, with Italy going fascist, Germany trying to contain its fascist, Holland trying to contain its fascist, the Eastern Europe, they're far gone. So, but London being the epicenter of the empire, where you could say, again, like you said, birth the United States, although we took an L there, but birth the United States technically is seen as the cultural heart of global white supremacy. If we can capture if we can capture the cultural center, is London, then we can advertise whatever it is we claim we're selling. So he comes in. When I say he, that's Texan, South African Texan, happened to be Elon Musk. Yeah, delivered a message via video link, and the video, and I mean, the fact that the guy can't even string sentences together is another thing And when he says you rise up and fight, I'm like, this is a nation of laws. And I go back to the opening point I use, which is money. If anything threatens the flow of money in the UK, they will crush it. And when I say they, the authorities here will crush it. When it comes to money, that is where white supremacy draws the line. So, and I say that to as a way.
So in other words, you're saying their God isn't
in religion, it's money.
It's money.
And I say that to say this, that in order to understand how to counter white supremacy, you must understand what it is you're looking at. What you're looking at is money first, backed by law, and a bit of myth around those two. The myth is we used to be a great empire. The wealth is extraction from where we used to be. And long will that continue as long as we don't mess it up. The last thing they want is people that cannot string sentences together to come in between them and that money. You can have your freedom of speech as long as they determine that it does not interfere with their money-making scheme. So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So back to the United States, where Donald Trump thinks if he whips up this thing, I mean, he's going to be in the UK in a couple of days. He will get the message anyway. If he thinks he's going to whip up a frenzy, a red frenzy that would challenge the status quo, they will crush him. And I don't say that as a threat. I'm just saying, having studied the British Empire, knowing how it operates, anything that gets in its way, it rolls over it. And that includes the United States president. So, I yield.
Well, time will definitely tell. We're for sure seeing the escalating violent rhetoric. And I think it's important for us to parse some of the words that have been thrown out. When is it just an opinion? When is it just political thoughts? When is it political violence? When is it hatred? What is protected speech? What isn't protected speech? Because people keep saying things like, it was just an opinion and you got killed for an opinion. And it's like, I think it was a little bit more than that. But certainly you're talking about the 110,000 people who marched and they're going to fight for I don't know what. This fear, the fear of Black and brown people taking over, which, except that they had so created an echo chamber where they thought they were the majority, white people, non-melanated people are actually a very small minority in the world, even though
they had loud minority
differently. Yeah. So anyway, we see the violent rhetoric. We see things like with the Charlottesville march here in the United States. The felon in chief saying very fine people on both sides. To the Proud Boys saying stand back and stand by. Charlie Kirk saying, hey, it's only rational that we lose some lives every year to maintain our gun rights. Evangelical Christianity wrapped around nationalistic violence. Universities now keeping watch lists and actually submitting lists to the government, similar to the Joe McCarthy era. And the way that people were surveyed and deported, kicked out, their lives, lost jobs. We actually are seeing in real time people who are getting pink slipped because on social media they said something that was considered disparaging towards Charlie Kirk or whatever his name is. So worldwide, we're seeing this. I think there's always been the coordination, but we're really seeing it come together more, this white supremacy as a global network. Yep. What I'm not seeing, or maybe the media is not reporting it as much, is how we are fighting back. So we've got about 20 minutes left here, and I really want to focus on what is our response? What should our response be? We know the different tools that they use. We know how they come against us. Dr. Duckett, you can jump in on how you see who's the racist and all of that. But what is our call to action at this time? What should we be doing?
I would say, in going back to England and understanding the fragmentation of the Roman Empire and how all that is scattered all the way around the world, and the control of the Roman Empire within England, it still exists for what it is, and that is the power structure for what it is. And what we see here on the Western Front is a byproduct of that, still trying to show it still has a sense of relevance to the power structure of England. So when we speak about that, we have to understand what it means to reclaim our tools. I think there needs to be a bunch of truth telling. And that's the one thing that we don't see is people telling the actual truth, even when it comes from us. And sometimes we don't even want to listen to the truth itself, because there is a hierarchy of needs that people of belongings that they try to attach themselves to. That's why you can see so many Black organizations side with Donald Trump, because they don't want to be left behind. They don't want to be the withouts. But in truth telling, you begin to open up the doors so people can understand. If you are a religious person, you'll be able to see the truth for what it is, and you can make that decision as the truth lies with you. Next, I think understanding the critical literacies of things and how things should be analyzed and how we should spend our time on social media and fighting that good fight. Looking at the critical race theory, why is it under attack? Why is it under attack? Trust me, I'm here with an educated panel, and I've taken Greek and Roman mythology, and I've taken British literature, and there's some very disgusting things in there too. Even when I took my religious class, there's some very disgusting things. I'm like, I had to read and study this and write a 500 word essay on this. But again, we don't speak about what we see. So critically, I think we need to understand, what does the literacy point mean and what we're doing. And then on top of that is one thing that we don't talk about, and it's true, and it's becoming more relevant, and you can see it right now, is the mental health. And how we as a people are dealing with our mental health. Because as we call it, some people call it intergenerational curses, traumas, and then some people call it choices. But whatever it is, there is something that's there that has not been dealt with within the Black community itself. It hasn't. And you can even see it matriculate into some of the white communities, because I have a lot of white counterparts, and we have these in-depth conversations sometimes, and they even have their own issues within their own counterparts there. Well, they don't like me because I'm Irish and he's English. Well, they don't like me because they call me, a WAP because I'm, Italian, and then you see there's this verification between them. And that verification is one is Anglo-Saxon Protestant and the other one is non-white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, because within them, there's even division. So again, the non-whites want to connect themselves to the Anglo-Saxon Protestant to get the belongings that they need. So I understand the mental health ramifications for us and how we move forward and begin to heal some of these relationships, because we need to have a partnership. As I know, there's blacks in our community that don't even like us, and all we try to do is stand in front of every bullet that comes. I mean, I stand in front of every bullet that comes, and sometimes I'm taking bullets for things I haven't even done yet, and I don't know if it's because they want to say the things that I say and they just can't, or they just don't like me because they think I'm going to get some preferential treatment from other people in the community. But those are a few things that I think we have to look at moving forward to create a sense of partnership with us all.
Again,
thank you. And Dr. Duckett, I will say this: when I look at even the leaders that we venerate today, when they lived, most people thought they were too risky. Most people really did not want to be that involved with them, because it's like, if I'm involved with you, white man might get upset with me and cut my benefits or cut my business or whatever. So you're in good company is what I'm saying to you. Yes, yes, Adesoji.
Yeah, I mean, remedies. So remedies would be, one is we need to connect with our memories.
Yeah.
When the good doc was mentioning that people they play hard and fast with the truth. Memories that are poignant to realities now have to be highlighted. What do I mean by that? The civil rights movement channeled all the vitriol against the Selma, the Montgomery bus boycott, channeled everything into ensuring that civil rights become a legacy to what has happened before. The question is, what are we doing to highlight, to connect those periods and the achievements, to be able to then say, listen, we might have lost some of those rights, but this is what they used to do in order to connect. Because half of the times we're not really conversing with each other. We're not having those conversations. As difficult as they might be, I might not agree with you starting from point A. I'm in Z, and I'm not even moving to Y. Who is willing to meet me at Z in order to convince me to then say, oh, you know what? If you actually pull back a bit, you might actually get an entire picture of what it is we're trying to achieve. We don't have that kind of people. The guy who was killed, Charlie Kirk, was sponsored by the Koch brothers and a couple of families, to the tune, his entire organization had a war chest, and that's essentially what we'll call it, of about 96 million, let's just say 100 million, for the sake of it, 100 million a year, with all these chapters. What are those chapters there for? They're to channel the youth towards that level of understanding, because they knew they already lost with regard to social media.
They had a whole indoctrination process in place.
And so they were doing what we would call...
And what are we doing?
Our rites of passage is what they're doing through the Turning Point USA. The rites of passage of saying, what makes you into an adult? I don't mean a man, I don't mean what makes you into an adult, that you're now pouring into society. What is valuable? This guy, basically, when they're saying...
hate all of these people, understand that they're coming to take your place. Women, make sure you get married early and start having children. Submit to your husband. All of those things. And make sure you have plenty of guns and ammunition.
Because they will keep harping on about the good old days, the good old America. When this guy came in, He said, "Make America great again." You and I know what that meant. They know what it meant. It was a catch-all situation. Later, people realized, oh, this is exclusionary. But somehow they said, no, but you have people that look like you amongst us. Unfortunately, we see the people that look like you and I amongst them, and we see the role they play. They're basically puppets. Your Candace Owens, your what's his name? Police Officer Tatum. I mean, the list, the entire. I mean, you could go through what's the kids? Oh my God, my names. I mean, when I watch them now, I just like there's so many that you're like, okay, so what's the grift here? So I say all of that to say this. It's important that not only do we counter those voices, but we also have to come together and have an idea of what it is we aim to achieve as a body of people. I know it can be it can't be too broad. It has to be local, so community-based, county, and then states, and then, spread it, and then commonalities becomes like a national umbrellas, because going top down is not going to help. It has to be bottom up. It has to be people led.
Yeah.
And I think looking out, there is a pushback for all the rhetoric in the last couple of days vis-a-vis the slaying of that chap, because I don't even want to venerate his name. That's why I try as much as possible not to. So since then we've decided, you know what, it's kind of, we have to understand that we are going to have to come together as not just a body of people in the United States, but also on a global level. This thing is not local.
Yes.
It is global.
And I would like to add to it, one of the things I missed out on, someone had asked me, about the revolution, and I always go back to Gil Scott-Heron, the revolution will not be televised because it's already enacted. It's already happening around us. And the only way to combat this whole revolutionary theory, I've said, and people says that is a little bit too drastic, we just witnessed a major super fight that was constructed by a white guy with two minorities in the ring trying to kill one another. Imagine us removing those two minorities, we would not have that super fight. So what I say is our best superpower that we have as a group of people is to remove a lot of our people from sports and entertainment. I mean, if you really said, blacks, walk out of the sports arena, mothers, don't put your kids in football or basketball or anything anymore, because you lose money anyhow doing it. Let's populate the library. Let's have a reading marathon. Let's do this for 2 years. I'm telling you, it changes the structure of everything, because sports is at least 60 to 70% people of color, so to speak. So again, but we don't want to do this because it hurts the kids. It takes away from their opportunities. I always say, what about those sharecropper kids? What about those slave kids? Someone's going to have to revert back to take a sacrifice for the legacy to move forward. So think about this. Think about where me and Aya live. Just imagine all blacks pulling their kids out of sports right now. That would be catastrophic just to the economy alone, because schools make their money off of sports. The organizations their boosters make money off of cleats and jerseys and travels and trips and all this type of stuff, where kids are missing education anyhow. So just remove them from them. Remove them. We can have mural leagues in the parks with our kids if that's what it takes. But I would not put our kids or our people anymore in a stadium like the Cowboys Stadium to make money for Jerry Jones anymore. Why? Why do it? You get nothing out of it, the satisfaction seeing a grown man make a touchdown. That's about it. But we're not willing to take that sacrifice. We're not willing to be the Muhammad Ali's. We're not willing to be the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, people that were willing to take their career and put it to the side for the greater good of the cause. So it's going to take a ground revolution like that to start, where no one's hurt. No one's hurt besides the school district and the city. So those are things that we have to look at to enact and really to get it going, because that's our only power. Remove ourselves from something that is a consumer base, which is us, and keep our money in our pocket. So
yeah, and Frantz Fanon did say in his one of his greatest books, The Wretched of the Earth, he said each generation. Oh, each generation.
Here.
Yeah, there's a feedback on that.
little feedback there.
Is it better?
Yeah, it's better.
COINTELPRO.
Okay.
At its best.
Yeah, I'm gonna mute mine real quick.
At its best. It's cleared up now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cleared up now. Okay, so Frantz Fanon. Yeah, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay.
So Frantz Fanon said in The Wretched of the Earth, each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. The mission before us now, as you and I are speaking across continents, is clear. We need to resist, and not just resist, but also thrive following resistance. So,
yes.
So, again, I hope people are paying attention, taking notes, and figuring out what role are you going to play, because it's one thing to hear this and then just hope someone else does it. It's another thing to know that we all need to be a part of this. Something that was curious to me that I went to look up is in 1964, when the Civil Rights Act was passed, how many Black elected officials did we have in Congress, in both the House and the Senate? And how many do we currently have now? And we have about 10 times the number that we had back then. The question is, why are we not progressing? So I do want to say, in addition to what you all have shared already, and remembering, going back to that movie I shared at the beginning, Sankofa, we have to go back and retrieve, to understand our history and to figure out how we use that knowledge and wisdom to move ourselves forward. That would make sure that when we get into these rooms and these spaces, that we actually understand what our role is in those places and how to wield power, and not just be, I'm the first Negro who, I'm the first Negro who, I'm the first Negro who, and we're not advancing. And humanity as a whole is not advancing, because again, let me say this, when Black people advance, everybody advances. When we fought for public education, everybody benefited from that. The other thing that I would say is that we need to vote. Be very, very diligent about who we're voting for, but we absolutely have to vote, because a lot of the hell that we're catching now, and white poor people, white farmers in Arkansas are crying over, is based on who we've put into office, right? Either by actively voting or choosing not to vote. But as an attorney, there's another part of voting that I think is incredibly important. There is a carve out for slavery in the United States Constitution, and that is incarceration. And guess how we get incarcerated? Typically, there's a jury of your peers. Now, who do they choose to be on those juries? You have to be on the voter rolls. So if you are not registering to vote, and if you're not exercising your right to vote, because in many states now, they kick you off the rolls if you don't vote, guess what? When it comes time to pull jurors, we're not in the room. And when we're not in the room, our people are going to, a lot of times, have a jury that is not of their peers. And it doesn't work out too well for us. So we've got work to do. Educate, reconnect, remember our memories, teach our young people, right? Build that bridge between the past and the present and our future, and be willing to take those hard hits and some of those sacrifices. I'm going to give each of you like 20 seconds if you've got something else you want to share. Dr. Duckett.
Yeah, I'm there with you on that. I think the biggest thing is common unity amongst us all. I've always said that we need to vote as a block, and that's the one thing that we have never done before, and I would love to see that. Maybe not even a party. We don't have to create a party. Just vote as a block. I think there's enough people in our communities and outside of our communities can spread the message of what is our top 5 priorities we want at a presidential level and also at the city council level, so that way it can ring as echoes throughout the world. Because I think once we start working together in that facet, it makes life much easier.
My thoughts are...
Thank you very much. And Brother Adesoji, 10 seconds.
So my thoughts are we need to exercise our memory of recall. I'm currently reading a book, The Second Emancipation by Howard French, and he talked about the global Pan-African movement, how people came together to ensure not just the independence, but also the civil rights movement came together. That's the kind of memories we need to re-engage with.
Well, thank you both, Dr. Duckett, Adesoji Iginla. I know that we will continue these conversations. And for all of you, our listeners, thank you so much. For those of you watching, those of you who download our podcast, thank you. Please like, please share, please subscribe, and please do the work. Y'all have a great week.